History is not just written in books, it is written in decisions, in power struggles, and sometimes, in decades of silence between two nations that once stood side by side. The relationship between Iran and United States is not just a political story, it is a story of trust broken, power challenged, and a world watching closely. Today, in 2026, the question is no longer just about conflict. The question is, can peace finally happen? To understand this, we must go back, far back into history. There was a time when Iran and the United States were not enemies. In fact, they were allies. During the early and mid-20th century, the United States saw Iran as a strategic partner, especially during the Cold War. Iran, under the rule of the Shah, maintained close ties with Washington. But everything changed in 1953. In that year, a covert operation supported by the United States and the United Kingdom led to the removal of Iran's Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. His decision to nationalize Iran's oil industry threatened Western interests, and the response reshaped Iran's political future. The Shah was restored to power, but the trust of the Iranian people was deeply shaken. For many in Iran, this was not just politics, it was interference, it was humiliation. And that wound never truly healed. Then came 1979. The Islamic Revolution transformed Iran into a completely different nation. The monarchy was overthrown, and a new Islamic republic emerged under revolutionary leadership. This was the turning point. The United States, once a close ally, suddenly became the symbol of everything the revolution opposed. And then came the hostage crisis. American diplomats were taken hostage inside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and for 444 days, the world watched as tensions exploded into a full-scale diplomatic breakdown. From that moment on, Iran and the United States were no longer just rivals. They were enemies. Decades passed. Sanctions were imposed. Alliances shifted. Proxy conflicts emerged across the Middle East. From Iraq to Syria, from Lebanon to Yemen, both nations found themselves on opposite sides of influence. And then came the nuclear issue. The United States accused Iran of pursuing nuclear weapons. Iran insisted its program was peaceful. But the world wasn't convinced. Tensions escalated. Sanctions tightened. The possibility of war became real. There were moments when diplomacy seemed to work. The 2015 nuclear agreement offered hope. It was seen as a breakthrough, a moment where both sides showed willingness to compromise. But that hope did not last. The deal collapsed, and tensions returned, stronger than before. And now, in 2026, we stand at another critical moment. Reports suggest that indirect talks and negotiations are once again taking place between Iran and the United States. There is movement, but there is also deep mistrust. At the center of everything is the nuclear program. The United States wants long-term restrictions and guarantees. Iran wants recognition of its sovereignty and the removal of sanctions. Neither side is willing to fully step back. And yet, both sides know one thing. They cannot continue like this forever. There is too much at stake. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil routes in the world, remains a constant point of tension. Any disruption here could impact global energy supplies overnight. This is not just a regional issue. This is global. Oil prices, global markets, political stability, everything is connected. But beyond politics and economics, there is something deeper. Fatigue. After decades of confrontation, both nations have paid a price. Iran's economy has struggled under heavy sanctions. The United States has spent years managing instability in the Middle East. No clear victory. No clear resolution. Just a long, exhausting standoff. This is why diplomacy is no longer just an option. It is a necessity. Recent efforts by international mediators have tried to bring both sides closer. But peace is not built in meetings alone. Peace requires trust. And trust is something that has been missing for a very long time. Each side accuses the other of bad faith. Each negotiation carries the weight of history. Every agreement is fragile. One wrong move, one misunderstanding, and everything could collapse. But imagine for a moment. What if peace actually happens? What if Iran and the United States reach an agreement? The impact would be massive. Tensions in the Middle East could decrease. Global markets could stabilize. Oil prices could become more predictable. And perhaps, just perhaps, a new chapter could begin. But the road to peace is not simple. It requires compromise. Iran would need to increase transparency in its nuclear activities. The United States would need to reconsider its sanctions and pressure strategies. Both sides would need to accept something they have avoided for decades: mutual respect. Because without respect, there can be no lasting peace. This is not just about governments. This is about people. Millions of lives are affected by the decisions made in closed rooms. Families, economies, futures. All connected to this one relationship. And yet, the risk of failure is still very real. If talks collapse, the consequences could be severe. Tensions could rise even further. Military confrontations could become more likely. And in a worst-case scenario, a conflict between Iran and the United States could drag the entire region, and possibly the world, into crisis. That is why the stakes are so high. This is not just another political negotiation. This is a defining moment. A moment where history could change direction. A moment where decades of hostility could either end, or continue for another generation. So the question remains, can Iran and the United States truly make peace? Or is this conflict destined to remain unresolved? There is no simple answer. But one thing is certain. The world is watching. Every move, every statement, every negotiation. Because what happens next will not just shape the future of Iran and America. It will shape the future of the world. And somewhere between power and diplomacy, between history and hope, lies the possibility of peace.